Come along with me, mates, because today we're looking at how this absolute weapon of a warrior, Choi Han, breaks out of the darkness to flip his destiny. But just when things were looking up, some dodgy, mysterious organization absolutely butchered everyone he considered his true family, with zero mercy. Now completely consumed by bloody rage, he kicks off a massive journey to dig up the whole truth. Hang on a sec. Did you lot actually reckon he was the main bloke? Not a chance. The real star is this noble named Kelly Hennetu. Just a bloke who fell asleep reading a novel and woke up as a 2-bit villain in the bloody story. Finding himself stuck as this completely useless noble, he just decided to kick back, live in absolute luxury, and not worry about a single thing. While our cheeky MC is getting dressed after a good scrub, he gets interrupted by his butler, who we'll come to know as Ron Milan, a bloody lethal assassin from the East. He might look like a sweet old granddad at first glance, but deep down, he's a ruthless, a cold-hearted killer. Our boy knows he's surrounded by red flags left, right, and center, so he needs to toughen up if he wants any chance of surviving in peace. But since he's definitely no gun warrior either, he'd much rather fly under the radar and keep his head down. His handsome mug already makes things tricky enough. Imagine if he actually had power. The butler leads him down to the dining room, where the staff greet him looking absolutely terrified. And fair enough too. The original Kale was an aggressive drunk who treated everyone like absolute dirt. Pay attention now, because when our MC rocks up to the dining room, we finally meet the Count's family. Count Daruth, head of the Hennetu's household, the stepmom Violan, the younger brother Basin, and little Lily. Turns out, Count Daruth isn't exactly packing massive power. He's just filthy, ridiculously rich. Since nobody in that family actually got along, it was the perfect spot to just bludge and stay out of trouble. It had been ages since our hero got to tuck into a feast like this, so every single bite was pure heaven. Kale was smashing the grub so hard that his little brother had never seen him enjoy a meal like that. Even when knocking back the wine, he acted super polite. The Count couldn't believe his troublemaker son was actually showing some decent manners. Kale knows full well that they all reckon he's a total bludger. So playing on his status, he plans to nick off to a quiet, drama-free spot and just lays about. That's why, when Daruth asks if he needs anything right now, he just hits him up for cash. Please, Dad, chuck us all the gold you've got. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, though. The Count isn't just rich, he's stupidly loaded, which forces our bloke to change up his plans. Kale asks the butler what the date is today, and turns out it's the 29th of March, year 781. This only means one thing. Our MC has got to put his foot on the gas because Choi Han is rocking up real soon. I know what you're thinking. What about the warrior? Well, Choi Han is going to bump into Kale, and after a massive misunderstanding, that absolute psycho is going to bash him to death. So the very next day, at the fancy tea shop, Kale tells his servant to bugger off. He doesn't want any interruptions while he sorts out his business. Inside the joint, we meet Billows, a pretty standard and bloody greedy merchant. The MC has popped in to rent out one of his private rooms for the whole day, because he just wants to kick back with a good book and a cuppa. I'll pay you right now. Mate, you can keep the change. But sir, this is a gold coin. That's way too much. Don't you worry about that. My good mate, that's absolute pocket change for me. Turns out, this room is the exact spot where Choi Han flogs him in the novel. In the original story, Kale's family was tied up with the absolute mongrels behind Choi Han's tragedy. And since the old Kale was a completely gutless piece of trash who cared more about his glass of wine than a human life, Choi Han didn't hesitate for a second when he saw the scumbag, and absolutely smashed him to bits in a flash, because of that exact reason. If our boy wants to dodge that grim fate, he needs to whip up a solid survival plan. Right at that very moment, Choi Han actually rocks up to the place. But the royal guards demand ID and completely block him from getting in, though that's not going to stop a fierce unit like Choi Han. He'll just have to sneak in overnight so the novel's plot can keep rolling on. Our MC gives Billows a heads up that he'll be back soon, and tells him to keep everything prepped for when he returns. Kale knows he's walking on thin ice, so he's got to track down some powers to keep his hide safe. In a world getting constantly battered by war, grabbing some serious power is the only real way to make sure you stay alive. And trust me, getting his hands on the indestructible shield is going to be the absolute key to saving his skin in this place. So step 1 to pulling that off is baiting the perfect trap. Oi, Baker! Serve me right now. I want you to sell me absolutely everything you've got. Here I reckon this more than covers the cost, but hurry up and pack it all away, or I'll take my business somewhere else. Yeah. Right, your lordship. Whatever you command. Get keen, 'cause today you're going to see our boy kick off a bloody master plan. Kale buys up all the bread he can get his hands on to head out of town, but a couple of kids start eyeing him off. And just like that, out on the edge of the kingdom, Kale finally chucks the bread on the ground. After all, he trekked a bloody long way, 'cause hiding behind that dodgy old wooden door is a seriously ancient tree. But before he can even make a move, these little voices pipe up, telling him to rack off. The kids warn him it's sketchy. They reckon that tree's a literal man-eater. Turns out, any poor bloke who gets too close ends up turning into a mummy overnight. Ages ago, some gluttonous chick got banished and starved to death, and right out of her own chest, this freaky tree sprouted up. All the pure spite and hatred from her soul is still trapped inside it. So if you want to score the indestructible shield, you've got to satisfy that spirit's ravenous hunger first. But the kids just keep yelling at him to nick off. Since Kale absolutely hates nosy little ankle bitters, he figures they'd better just eat the bread and stop bugging him. Or they'll have to deal with the infamous Kale, the absolute trash of the Count's family. That does the trick, scaring him off so our protagonist can finally get back to his real plan. But mate, the second he offers up the first loaf of bread as a sacrifice, it vanishes in the blink of an eye. Now here's the juicy part. If you're wondering why the heck there's a shield in there, it's 'cause it's hoarding a grudge so incredibly dark and thick. If the soul manages to chill out, it'll start glowing, and all that raw rage will transform into an unbreakable shield. After blowing through all the bread, Kay can't bloody believe it didn't work. The grudge is just too massive. He's gonna have to come back again tomorrow. Our boy might reckon these kids are a massive pain in the neck, but he definitely doesn't want the tree gobbling him up just for being careless. So he promises to bring him heaps more bread tomorrow, just in time for another night crashing at the shop. Kale decides it's time to bail. So before heading off, he tells Belos that the tea and the book were absolutely spot on. A bit later, down at the local pub, the poor bodyguard is about to cop the brunt of it, which honestly makes total sense. 'Cause back when the original Kale hit the booze, every single thing in the joint would get completely trashed. Oi, goatee! Take this and grab me some grub and a drink. Yes, my lord. I'll get that for you straight away. This pub used to be the absolute go-to for dodgy crooks and scumbags, but for some reason, they're all steering clear of it now. Usually, noble scum love surrounding themselves with those kinds of blokes, but since the original Kale was already considered absolute bottom-of-the-barrel trash, they just kept their distance. So to keep up his cover story, I know exactly what you're thinking, but our protagonist just treats him like total garbage while kicking back with his fancy red wine. After all, he needs a bit of liquid courage, 'cause just a few meters down from the pub, the moment Choi Han makes his grand entrance is closing in fast. Though as luck would have it, there were these little kittens just on the other side of the wall. Choi Han jumped down, but trying to dodge them so they wouldn't get hurt, the poor bloke ended up rolling his ankle. So, since these kinds of crazy plot conveniences play a massive role, He's going to have to shake things up to pull off a completely different outcome. That's why, if Kale doesn't want to look completely desperate, he's really going to have to put in the hard yards to make an absolutely killer first impression. And feeding those kittens, it's the perfect bloody plan. Knowing damn well he's being watched, our boy asks Choi Han straight up if he's hungry, or if he at least has a place to crash. He's a proud bloke. But after a few seconds, he caves and admits he's starving, which means Kale's plan is working like a charm. Right then! Come with me. I'll get you the most mouth-watering feed you could ever imagine. But right as they're heading back to the manor, one of the cats catches our hero's eye in a big way. 'Cause even though he's not exactly a cat person, he just can't bring himself to ignore him. Still, the grey kitty tells his sibling they've got a bolt. So he's got no choice but to say see you later to his brand new little furry mates. A bit later, just outside the castle, he notices a tiny little detail. Choi Han is sizing him up to see if he's an easy target to take out. But lucky for him, the guards were already on the lookout. You really shouldn't be wandering around alone this late. There's some dangerous psychos out there. Welcome home, my lord. Kale thanks Ron for the welcome, but for some reason, he can feel this crazy tense vibe going on between the two of them. No need to stress just yet, though as long as they don't interact, everything will be sweet. And right here is where we meet the butler, Hans. Wrapping up this episode with loyal Hans looking absolutely stoked to see the young master coming home sober for once. I actually had a few drinks already, so I'll save my bottle just in case I get super thirsty later on. Brace yourselves, 'cause right here in the castle kitchen, our main guy is about to meet someone super important, and that happens to be Beercroc, Ron's terrifying son, a gloomy bloke cooking with an absolute killer stare, who'll end up joining our hero once he sees his cooking skills. In the end, if Beercroc decides to tag along with Choi Han, his dad will follow, completely freeing our protagonist from the two assassins from his past life. Hey, chef, whip up some grub for my guest. Excuse me, put that bloody knife down already and make a decent sandwich for my dear friend here. Forced to cook like that, this trio of absolute madmen finally meet face to face. By the way, since you're already cooking, make something for me too, but keep it top quality, like that bloody brilliant steak from yesterday. And just like that, our protagonist bails from the kitchen, but not before ordering Hans to keep a close eye on Choi Han. Watch out for this, because if push comes to shove, he'll use Choi Han to impress Beercroc by beating the absolute stuffing out of him. This happens right before the butler fills the count in on Kale's latest antics. At the end of the day, as long as that drunkard stays in town, whatever he does is completely under their control. Though to be honest, Daruth just can't stop thinking about how much his son has changed lately. It's not like he's suddenly gotten stronger or smarter these days, but his whole attitude is just completely different now. Because of that, Daruth orders Hans to keep a real close eye on him. Since that weird attitude isn't the only thing about him that's changed. With the Hennetus family expanding and the continent getting more dangerous, keeping the peace becomes absolutely vital, all while our main guy suffers through a hell of a hangover. That's exactly why his butler decides to bring him a piping hot cup of tea. Noticing a wicked cut on Ron's neck, Kale asks him what happened. Surprised by his master's unusual interest, the old bloke just completely makes up an excuse. A little cat scratched him and bolted. Kale absolutely does not buy that massive lie, but he'd much rather ignore it to handle his unfinished business. Right before leaving, the old man asks him how the tea was. Kale nervously answers that it was delicious. What a creepy old bloke. Why would he even ask something like that? And just when we least expected it, the kingdom's future heroes bump right into each other. Son of a bitch, Kale thinks to himself. That crazy bastard genuinely scared him, but hiding his absolute terror. He asks Choi Han what he's after. To which the noble warrior, in a dead calm voice, replies that he's going to pay back everything they've done for him. It's the absolute bare minimum he can do for the food. Don't stress about it. Mate, need anything else. Just tell me. Who the hell does he think he is? He doesn't even have a single coin on him to pay me right now. But Choi Han wants to ask a massive favor. Kale, knowing exactly where this is heading, shuts him down straight away, telling him that any requests need to go through Han's. And if you reckon that's not good enough, the head butler is absolutely brilliant at handling those kinds of requests too. Choi Han wants to know the real reason behind all these crazy privileges, but Kale makes it crystal clear that he doesn't need a reason to lend a hand to people in need. Besides, it's not like they're going to ask him to do anything overly complicated or dangerous anyway. With the whole thing sorted, Kale heads off to ask the Count for his allowance. The servant immediately nods with total respect, while the young master just wants to bolt out of there fast. Ron's left scratching his head watching this. His young master absolutely hates bitter tea, but today he drank the whole lot without a single whinge. It's almost like he's terrified of something. Does he actually know more than he should? Out of nowhere, Choi Han asks the old man to lead the way. Bloody brat. He's sharp as a tack, yet he still pretends to be completely clueless about what's going on. Even if Ron reckons Choi Han is a bit twisted, he'll still follow orders. The very next day, Kale heads out to feed the man-eating tree. As soon as Kale gets near the black tree, a creepy female voice desperately begs him for more and more food. The novel reveals that the poor soul actually belongs to an ancient priestess, but Kale has to get back to the Count and reckons he'll finish feeding her later. On top of that, it's pretty much become a habit for that pair of orphan kids to beg him for a piece of bread every time they see him. Since the Count's son completely wiped out the local bread supply, Kale has to go hunting for new bakeries in town. But the funniest bit is that the bakers themselves are going to come looking for him directly, knowing damn well beforehand that our main guy always buys up absolutely all their stock. They'll give their absolute best customer the VIP treatment, handing him straight away a massive sack full of delicious, freshly baked buns. And that, mates, is exactly how our protagonist becomes the ultimate VIP customer in the whole city. Get keen, because today we're going to see how Bia Croc secretly reckons his boss has completely lost the plot. His old man said he's been pretty interesting lately, and if he's right, it'll definitely be a bloody good laugh watching him, just like that dark-haired punk. While Kale hands out some herbs to the poor kids, who'd honestly much rather a loaf of bread instead of that rubbish. Our main guy feels for him because back when he was Kim Rok-soo, he was nothing but an orphan who had absolutely bugger all. That's why folks used to show him sympathy, though deep down it was really just pity more than anything else. So growing up, he made up his mind to help out any kid stuck in absolute misery. He absolutely hates seeing them suffer the exact same way he did. Which is why he'll keep feeding him now, so he can keep nourishing that mysterious tree. Bit by bit, the darkness in his soul starts to fade away. And just as he was looking for the kids, he bumped into the cats he rescued the other day, who are now following him absolutely everywhere he goes. Later on at Count Daruth's castle, they hand a pass to his son, who's heading off to the capital to represent the family. Basin was supposed to go, but since Kale's the eldest, he's the one who has to show up at the massive event the crown is throwing. Now pay close attention here, mate, because our protagonist absolutely hates this plan since the horrific plaza incident is about to kick off, where a terrorist group is going to launch an attack, but thanks to Choi Han managing to stop half of their scheme, he ends up winning over the crown prince and the royal family. Long story short, it's a massive bloody headache. Plus, even if Kale wanted to bail on it, it's not exactly like he can ask his brother for a favor that massive. So his old man is definitely up to something. After all, according to Daruth, it was the exact sort of thing Kale used to do all the time. The protagonist asks his dad for a bit of time to think it over, And the second the meeting wraps up, Kale knows he's about to lose his right as the heir, since his little brother has been stepping up as the successor for the last 2 years. Because of that, the most logical thing would be for Basin to just take over the family leadership. Things might be getting way too messy, but it's totally worth taking a crack at the opportunity. If it all pans out, Basin won't cark it and the protagonist gets to live in peace. Oh, young master, regarding your guest request, Hans, shut your trap and bring him in. Our protagonist orders his servant that if Choi Han says no, just remind him that the payout is going to be incredibly generous. Actually, it's the perfect chance for Choi Han to pay him back for all the top-notch hospitality. I know exactly what you're thinking. And it's that when they meet up, Choi Han tells him to cut to the chase, sensing that the novel's destiny is shifting. So, as the number one requirement to lock down a peaceful life, he might need to tweak his plans. But by bringing Choi Han onto his team, he'll stop his future clan from getting their hands on the ancient powers, letting our protagonist snatch him up instead. Choi Han straight up admits he's not exactly the best at protecting others, but he's brilliant at wiping out enemies. What kind of plan is he going to pitch to Choi Han next? Even if it's a massive challenge for him, nothing is really impossible to pull off. So after a proper yarn and formal introductions, the two of them finally get acquainted and seal their big alliance. Therefore, Choi Han's mission will be to cross paths with Rosalind, the princess from the neighboring kingdom, who's traveling with the backing of her brother, the Airlock, son of the terrifying Wolf King, who looks like a pretty average bloke at first glance, but can transform into an absolutely savage werewolf. Even though Rosalind's power easily rivals Choi Han's, she's going to turn into a massive hero as the story goes on. So the main gig is to track them down and safely escort them all the way to the capital. But Choi Han will have to hit the road alongside Kale, because halfway there they're going to bump into a Marquis who's stepping up as the latest villain. This dodgy bastard god only knows how managed to raise a captive dragon that went completely feral when it escaped. But after a brutal showdown with Choi Han, it'll end up dead. So step 1 is heading to that village to either free the dragon or take it out. Whichever comes first, making dead sure that all these dramas get sorted. So Choi Han can go hunt down the siblings. If he pulls it off, his massive debt will be wiped clean. So now that the dark-haired bloke has his assignment, he can head off straight away, though everything they've just chatted about is going to stay a dead secret between the two of them. And a few hours later, he asks his old man for a bigger budget, using the excuse that he wants to buy some sweet bread. Tag along with me to the very next day, right smack in the middle of the kingdom. Our protagonist wakes up in an absolutely foul mood, all because bloody Ron has been getting on his nerves since early morning. The butler offered to teach him how to hunt rabbits, but instead of sounding friendly, his whole vibe came off as incredibly messed up and sinister. Buckle up, mates, because we've got some massive news coming along for the ride straight to the capital. Kale drops by his trusty baker to let him know today's the last day he'll be grabbing bread in person, but not to stress, since he'll still be putting in regular orders, only to bump into the poor little street kids waiting for him like clockwork. And just like always, he chucks them a few pieces. But mate, the moment of truth has finally arrived. As Kale feeds the tree more, it starts giving off this blinding glow. The only catch to all this is that the tree was demanding way more grub than normal. Then right as Kale tosses the last chunks of bread, the tree chimes in saying they're heaps tastier than before. At the end of the day, to a soul, every loaf is different from the wheat right down to the prep. It all changes the flavor. Back in the day, when she was a nun, the temple only ever gave her bland, boring scraps, so she'd never tasted anything this bloody good in her whole past life. Still, she genuinely thanks our MC for feeding her so well. Without him, she'd never have gotten to enjoy a proper meal again. And pay attention here. because now comes his reward, which is nothing less than the blessing of the tree's priestess. This massive surge of power rushes straight into his heart, and he unlocks the indestructible shield, which is going to stay locked right in his heart until the day he dies. An absolutely broken skill that means our main man never has to stress about taking fatal damage ever again. Mind you, it's not as fragile as it looks, though it could technically shatter if it gets slammed with way too much force. The massive perk is that it can actually level up and get stronger right alongside his heartbeat. That's exactly why Kale's going to try to beef it up, just in case Choi Han decides to try and off him somewhere down the track. A bit later, when it started bucketing down, our MC runs into those cute little kittens again, who just wouldn't stop pestering him. So he decides to take them home. Now Kale hands Hans the massive job of looking after them properly. And even though the butler reckons they're absolutely adorable, Kale gives him a dead serious warning to protect them with his life and never separate them, because they're siblings. That's right, guys. Obviously, these little kitties turned out to be those exact same orphan kids. Changing the subject, Hans lets him know that Choi Han, Ron and B.A. Crocs are wrapping up the prep to get this trip on the road. Taking advantage of the timing, our MC swings by to visit Billows again, telling him straight up they need to talk privately right now. He knows Billows just looks like your average bloke, but pretty soon he's going to reveal his secret ambition and forge a massive alliance with Choi Han. Billows confirms with our handsome MC that he's also planning to head to the capital. Exactly what you and I were waiting for. This right here is the exact moment their alliance kicks off. Billows mentions that he doesn't match his reputation at all, to which Kale fires back that being called trash doesn't define who he is. So he uses the opening to ask him straight out if he's actually happy being a bastard child. Maybe they've both been useless scum for years, but there always comes that crucial turning point in a bloke's life where he's got to change. So tell me, are you willing to take that step? Yeah, I'm absolutely fed up too. And I want to change. Right at that moment, someone rocks up looking for the young master, and Billows has to say goodbye to his guest. Kale knows he's got to keep his distance from Billows in the capital, because now that they've met just like in the novel, his story is only just beginning. Kale asks Choi Han and Ron how they've been getting along lately, since Ron is a pretty sly old bloke who asks our MC what he was doing with the innkeeper, to which Kale just tells him to pull his head in and that it's none of his business. On top of that, he asks him to bring him that special stress relief tea, the same one he brews up every day to keep him healthy. Something that Ron actually seems quite pleased about, but he won't make a single gesture to show his gratitude, which Choi Han finds bloody weird, since if you ask him, Ron is a pretty straightforward guy, especially considering he and his son challenged him to a duel not long ago and couldn't actually beat him. B.A. Crocs got completely obsessed and has challenged him a bunch more times since. Even though Choi Han asks him not to get the wrong idea, he's still going to protect Kale. Plus, after eavesdropping on his private chat with Billows, he's starting to realize his young master is actually someone he can trust. They might not get on perfectly right now, but those two are going to end up being inseparable mates. The novel might not be playing out exactly how it should, but the major events haven't changed one bit. And so, right before leaving, Kale warns him that he'll be keeping a close eye on him every single day. What do you reckon about that warning? Wow, seems like even behind all that coldness, there's always a bit of hidden care tucked away. Come along with me, 'cause we seriously don't want our mutual hatred turning into pure affection. Now do we? Ron knows damn well from personal experience that the young master is an absolute piece of trash. But he also remembers when he was just a little tacker, standing by his dad during the absolute worst of times. Yeah, he was a total drunk, but he never turned his back on the people he loved. Ron wondered if keeping an eye on the young master for this long was starting to make him a bit of a softie, and so back at the castle, Our adorable little kitties were waiting impatiently for their savior. Oh, I almost forgot they were still hanging around. Turns out these furballs are doing absolutely brilliant because Hans completely fell head over heels for the little critters. So if you need a single bloody thing for the little ones, don't you hesitate for a second to give him a shout. All of a sudden, the kitties caught Ron's eye, and he knows exactly what they are. These little cats belong to the cunning cat tribe. The grey one controls the fog, and the red one handles poison. Ron knows full well that this tribe is incredibly sly. So with the right training, they'd be absolutely brutal allies for our young master. A little while later, when our main man finally got some proper alone time with the felines, he figured out they were never going to leave his side, so he started plotting how to use them. He ordered them to drop the ordinary kitty act and just speak up once and for all. And the little ones introduced themselves as An and Hong. Now pay attention to this bit, 'cause they tell him they're starving, and he promises to feed 'em in exchange for a sneaky little favor. 4 days have passed since then, and in the royal dining room, Rewrote asks his son if he's feeling nervous about the trip, but Choi says nah. And why on earth would he be? He already stopped Choyan from bashing him to death, and on top of that, he snagged a legendary shield to protect himself, figuring that even if he gets tangled up with dodgy blokes as dangerous as Ron or Beercroc, he'd manage to survive. Even so, he asked his old man why he bumped up the number of guards escorting him. But that order actually came straight from Countess Violan. It's not that she doesn't trust her own stepson. It's just that appearances are absolutely everything in high society. Kale gets it. The Countess started from the absolute bottom, and her biggest dream was always to become a top dog in commerce. She clawed her way up through sheer skill, and when she rocked up to the Henatu's territory, she fell madly in love with Count Rewrote, eventually becoming the highly respected head of arts and culture around there. She fought tooth and nail to get where she is today, so it's a bloody no-brainer that she wants to protect her status. However, it doesn't matter how many soldiers are looking after him if they don't free the dragon in time. It's game over for sure. That's why Kale tells his stepmom that art reflects the soul, since a gorgeous sculpture isn't carved just to be stared at, but to truly capture what the artist wanted to say. What's more, he remembers a piece with an engraved quote saying that appearances don't mean a damn thing. And if his memory serves him right, the creator of that masterpiece was the Countess herself. Violan tells him he can do whatever he wants with the guards, as long as he keeps the carriage looking flash and luxurious. Rewrote straight up can't believe his ears. For the very first time in her life, Violan felt some genuine, heartfelt affection for her stepson. Changing the subject, Rewrote asks Callie if he knows anything about the man-eating tree, which has been looking heaps better lately. Kale knows full well that his dad suspects he had something to do with it, but he decides to play dumb, just saying it's a mighty interesting rumor. Rewrote simply warns him to watch his step. One false move will spark nasty gossip, so he needs to stay sharp. And with that, the second the fancy family dinner wraps up, Basin and Lily scurry over to their big brother, because aside from saying goodbye, they wanted a little one-on-one chat with him. And get a load of this when Kale hops into his carriage. He's in for a massive shock. Why on earth are the kitties sitting on a cushion flashier than anyone else's? Hans tells him they deserve to travel in absolute bloody comfort. Poor naive bloke. He hasn't got a clue that these cute little critters command the fog and spit deadly poison. Suddenly, Choi Han rocks up to offer a personal escort right inside the carriage. He clearly wants to make damn sure he stays safe. Kale shoots him down straight away, even though he can see right through that intense glare that the thirst for revenge is still burning deep inside him. At the end of the day, that ain't his job anyway. That's exactly what they've got a completely useless royal knight for. Righto, time to hit the road once and for all. Yep, the moment to head off has finally arrived. Already on the road, Kale starts looking back on the sweet little chat he had with his younger siblings. They wanted a souvenir, and Lily's been dreaming of getting a sword. Stick around for the next part to see if she actually manages to become the ultimate swordswoman. Come along and check out this story, where Kale notices his little sister's got the perfect talent to master the blade, and straight away promises to buy her the most bloody incredible weapon he can find. While Basin just asks for a pen, a massive problem pops up out of nowhere when bandits rock up to steal their loot. Oh, just what we needed. Do these Drongos not see they don't stand a chance against us? Spot on, what absolute idiots. They can't beat us. They're just complete rookies. My young master. And if we take a breather around here, there are heaps of rabbits about. Though, yeah, not exactly the type I was hoping to hunt for you. Crikey, that old bloke is scarier than the bandits themselves. Righto, go for it. But only after you're done dealing with the lot of them. A day and a half has passed, and our heroes are barely halfway to finding the dragon. So it's the perfect time to take a breather and grab some grub. Since Ron's been hunting rabbits non-stop, for now everything's going smooth as silk, thanks to the soldiers easily sorting out those bandits. Check this out. The fight was over in a flash. And yeah, let's be real. It was an absolute breeze of a scrap. Honestly, taking them out was a piece of cake. Brilliant. Everything's miles easier with a psycho by your side. Meanwhile, Ron asks the young master if he enjoyed the rabbit he hunted down for him. Choi Han wants to ask his boss a question. Hey, why are you staring at my face so much? Sorry, young master. Was this your first battle? You mean the run-in with those bandits? Yeah, mate. It was my first time. I see. Must be the first time you felt your life was on the line. No, you idiot. If only you knew I've been the one looking out for you. Well, not just you. Those two are way too unhinged. They're total weirdos. RMC is so stressed out he's lost his appetite. But Choi Han tells Kaylee not to get all worked up. If he learned martial arts, maybe he wouldn't be so stressed. But Kale tells him there's no need. Can't he see all these massive blokes protecting him? He doesn't know it. But his heart is a massive walking shield. Even though Kale shows this off with pride, the blokes don't buy it because he's such a scrawny fella. Seeing that he's got no bloody chance of changing his mind, Choi Han decides to head off and train to get stronger. And to be honest, his sheer determination fired up all the knights to train that night too. Brace yourselves, because our heroes only have 3 days left before the whole tragedy blows up. According to the novel, there's a Viscount's cabin, and right behind it is the lair where they've locked up the dragon. But since it's already gotten dark, Han suggests his lord find a place to crash for the night, along with Choi Han. All of a sudden, while our crew was minding their own business, a carriage nearly runs over an old bloke, but Choi Han jumps in right in the nick of time to save his life. But as soon as Kale spots the flag on the carriage, he knows exactly who it is. The bloke behind this is Vinyashan Stan, the absolute scumbag torturing the dragon, and since his guard has zero shame, he kicks up a fuss about them helping the old fella. That useless old pest should already be 6 feet under. Choi Han wanted to bash his face in, but Vinian orders his guard to back off. Young master, you really ought to settle your servant down too. Don't you reckon? Hey, you idiot. That's enough. But, young master, that bloke almost killed the poor old man. I told you to settle down. Kale notices from the state of Vinian's sleeves that this sick bastard just walked out from torturing the dragon. The Viscount introduces himself super formally because of his status, and Vinian replies that it's an absolute pleasure to meet him. Looks like that piece of trash was actually good for something. And while the old bloke is begging the Viscount for forgiveness, Kale's thinking the government round here is brutally authoritarian. RMC wouldn't mind if they beat this bloke to a bloody pulp, but since he's his employee, he can't let him drag his name through the mud. So instead of lending a hand, he asks the old bloke where he can find a pub. If he doesn't knock back his 3 glasses of wine soon, he's gonna snap. Kale says his goodbyes to Viscount Vinian, but since our MC had the guts to touch the filthy old man, Vinian gives him a crushing handshake and tells him the pleasure's all his, hoping they cross paths again soon. Yeah, right, mate. And if that happens, I hope to keep you as far away from me as humanly possible. Kale explains to Choi Han that half the bloody nobles are exactly like that, but our MC is built different and wants to know if the old bloke is all right. The bloke appreciates the gesture and reveals he's actually the sole owner of an inn and pub in the area.
Choi Han asks him why he didn't step in for the old fella.
And Kale replies that it wouldn't have changed a thing. What do you lot reckon? Come along and check out this absolute madness, where the golden rule to surviving is keeping your nose out of trouble. But of course, our main guy is scheming to get his payback at the exact right moment. His servant asks what on earth he means, and Kale just flat out tells him they're basically going to pinch a dragon. Later on at the inn, after the old bloke sorts Kale out with a room, Hans rocks up shortly after with a direct message from his young master, letting him know they'll be crashing there for 3 days. Just as the butler heads off, the little kiddies pipe up, super curious about what's hiding inside that mystery box, and Kale replies that it's just the gear they need to teach the bad guys a proper lesson. Turns out, during his previous chats with the merchant Bilos, our protagonist tasked him with tracking down a bunch of pricey items. Bilos gave him a heads up that 2 of them couldn't be rented, so he'd have to buy them outright under his own name. And once he's done with them, he can just hand him right back. Hey, what's this little ball of crap? It's actually a magic artifact that disrupts mana. It's not rubbish. Mate, it's worth millions. This little sphere packs the bloody incredible power to block out the magic waves of pretty much any device nearby. And since our main guy knows it's tough as nails, pay close attention, because now Kale hands the map over to the kiddies and orders them to head straight for this mysterious mountain. Out there, they're going to find an isolated little cabin. So their mission is to rescue their future little brother. He orders them to head up that mountain and bury the sphere somewhere dead safe. On and Hong reckon it'll be a piece of cake, and absolutely no one will manage to spot him. He promises them that if they pull it off, they'll score all the delicious meat they can eat. And with that on their minds, the little furballs happily dart off to make their master proud. Later on, while the kittens are out doing their job, Kale's having a cuppa with Choi Han and asks him right out of the blue if he's ever seen a dragon. Choi reckons he's seen some fierce beasts, but absolutely nothing that compares. Kale explains to him that dragons, just like any magical creature, are actually quite similar to humans. But then he asks him to imagine a being that's been suffering since the day it was born. If someone like that ever got free, they'd obviously be out for blood, hunting down every single person who wronged him. If only the poor thing had a family to protect it from all that abuse, things would have turned out completely different. Hook, line, and sinker. Choi. I heard a rumor that there's a creature in that exact situation, right near here. Young master, are you planning to save it and take it in? Have you completely lost the plot? Why the hell would I adopt it? Kale doesn't reckon a dragon that's been tortured by humans can be tamed easily. Plus, they think they're way better than us. But the main reason is, if you adopt a dragon, you'll end up drawing the attention of the entire bloody world. Gotta love it. But why are you asking me a question with such an obvious answer? That dragon deserves its freedom, so gear up for a rescue mission. I bet you were itching to see this play out too. I'm ready to back you up all the way. Don't stress. I'm not planning on offing anyone. You know that. Right, what an absolute joke. Later on at the pub, our boy Kale was already there, putting on a show of being completely smashed. Hey Hans, you sure he drinks this much? Yeah, no worries. As long as he doesn't have anything in his hands to throw, it'll all be sweet. Oi, old mate, This bottle's bloody brilliant. Got any more? What's going on? What are you all staring at? You lot looking for a scrap. Young master, please don't cause a scene. And what's it to you? Mate, I couldn't give a toss about you. Get over here and help me. I feel like I'm gonna chuck up. And I just want to sleep. Young master, I've got you. This absolute psycho is gonna help me. Everyone fell right for his little act. And since Kale knows damn well no one can see him looking stone cold sober, he tells him he's sneaking out for a bit in absolute secret. Kale warns his servants that he's going to sleep, and they better not dare wake him up if they value their lives. Of course. Young master. Sleep well. Young master. Though, sir, you still need my help, just to walk in a straight line. Oi, Choi, sneak in through the window the second the sun goes down. I'll be waiting for you right here. So as soon as night falls, both the kiddies and Choi Han are all set to kick off the plan. Our hero hands Choi Han a uniform to infiltrate with, one that belongs to a dangerous and mysterious secret organization. It won't be perfect, but everyone's going to remember the star on that uniform. Sir, we're about to do something really bad, aren't we? Spot on, bad for Venian. That is, stick around and join me to see what goes down in the next video. Buckle up. Mate, you and I are about to watch the kickoff of a mission that will change absolutely everyone's destiny. If they haven't been spotted yet, it means the stealth orbs hidden by the kiddies are working like a charm. Any guard that crossed their path got instantly knocked out by Choi Han. Hong, roll out the fog now. Kale is heading straight in to find the dragon, while Choi Han cleans up the last of the guards. The Viscount is wondering what on earth is going on outside, completely clueless that our blokes already got him cornered. The Viscount is shaking in his boots, 'cause he'd rigged a bomb to blow if any intruders showed up. That's exactly why Kale used Hong's poison to paralyze him. After snatching the key, he gave the kiddies a massive pat on the back for their brilliant work. And that's how our heroes finally reach the depths of the cell where Raon Miru is kept. The little dragon of our story. As the heavy door creaks open, the creature realizes he's got some unexpected visitors. Even though Kale notices his fierce glare, the dragon decides to accept his help. When they group up with the kiddies, both An and Hong are super worried about their battered new little mate. Kale tells them he's already on it. But before using the healing potion, he needs to get rid of that collar blocking his mana. While Kale's thinking about what to do, he remembers a little unfinished business. He had a score to settle with the Viscount and delivers a solid kick. Now this is where you need to pay attention, because Kale remembers a crucial detail from the novel about Vinion. It says that if you follow the wall, you'll find an unusually flat spot, and if you give it a bit of a shove, it'll reveal the way out. That's how the escape route opens up. Just then, Choi Han rocks up, looking absolutely stunned to see they actually rescued the dragon. Choi Han reports to the young master that he let the workers leg it and only knocked out the armed guards. Kale orders Choi Han to give the wall a little whack, but warns him to hold back on his crazy strength. It's not like we want to bring the whole bloody cave down on our heads. With the path clear, it's time to bail. Once they're out of the dark cavern, Raon can't believe he's finally free. Kale starts getting a soft spot for the little dragon, admiring his tough spirit that flat out refuses to give up against all odds. That's why he's got one last gift for him. Our main guy manages to snap the awful punishment collar in a single strike, leaving Raon absolutely gobsmacked. Kale explains that even though the collar conducts electricity, his rubber gloves block the shock. Then, holding up the healing potion, he gently tells the little dragon to just let himself be healed once and for all. I bet you felt that too. Eh? The massive contrast between the horror of his torturer and this new warmth. You'd better heal up quick. You cost me an absolute fortune. With his wounds finally healed, Kale asks him straight up, "What are you planning to do with your life now?" Aren't dragons supposed to be the smartest and proudest race? So he orders him to answer, knowing full well he can talk. Raon replies firmly that he just wants to live free,
Get away and never be tamed by anyone.
When Kale assures him he can do whatever he wants, Raon hesitates, to totally convince the human is lying to him. Kale calmly tells him that, yeah, humans lie, but this time he's completely free to choose his own path. If his biggest dream is to fly free, who is he to boss him around? With the little dragon finally safe, it's time to head off. The mission turned out to be a massive success. They rescued Raon, completely outsmarted Vinian, and saved the village. Plus, Choi Han felt a sense of freedom reflecting off the dragon. On and Hong excitedly ask if the dragon is going to be their new little brother, but Kale tells them not to be ridiculous. A dragon would never agree to be a pet, and he definitely hates humans. Before heading back to the cabin, he gives them one last job. Retrieve the hidden orbs. Since this is the first time Choi Han has actually saved someone, Kale gives him props for a top-notch effort. Sure, he took on some bandits not too long ago, but that was just protecting, not saving, by turning things around. The fate of the village got completely fixed.
Hey, young master.
What are you going to do if the dragon decides to tag along to our village anyway? Geez, I hadn't thought of that. Hey, I told you that won't happen. Right, but if it does, what's your game plan? If he follows me, I'd be in deep trouble. You know what? Let's not stress over things that haven't even happened yet. Though I highly doubt it. He's a proud dragon. They don't do that sort of thing, do they? For you and me. It's bloody obvious the little dragon has already gotten attached to this big redhead. The next day, back at the cabin, Kale starts whining as he feels the awful hangover from all the grog he downed yesterday. Come along with me and watch as Choi tells him to just chill out and quickly cover his tracks. Plus, they've only got a few days of travel left before they hit their next stop, the famous Puzzle City. By the way, his little stunt has already sparked some drama. Choi lets his young master know that the Viscount's soldiers were absolutely losing it and bailing from the cabin in a mad rush. No doubt they'll be heading straight back to fill the Viscount in on everything that went down there. The funny thing is, the escape route they took was completely wiped clean, no trees. No grass, not even any dirt left behind. Everything around them was totally wrecked, and Kale figured the dragon did it out of pure spite. So as long as he hasn't actually killed anyone, it's nothing to stress over. Even though he's only 4 years old, dragons are incredibly sharp thanks to their massive connection with mana. Excuse me. Master, what should I do now? You can head off now. Get out of here, you big fatty. Go on. Oh, righto. I'll go see what Bee's up to, since they're pretty tight. Are they mates? Nah, not at all. We aren't mates, right? Wow, I've never seen him like that. Right before taking off, Choi Han got weirdly anxious out of absolutely nowhere. Because one of the knights had just been chatting with Kale's guard a moment ago. Though Choi was mostly just stressing that he might have used way too much force and knocked the bloke out cold for a whole day. Looks like he underestimated himself, so pay close attention here, because he's going to be using even more brute strength. Meanwhile, our hero asks the barkeep for another bottle. After all, the best cure for a hangover is a bit of hair of the dog. Turns out the Viscount's guard asks them what they were up to all night, to which he replies that they just had a few drinks and crashed. Slimes. He's probably scratching his head, wondering who nicked his dragon. Might be time to put on a bit of a show. Oi, you two! What are you staring at? I can't exactly drink in peace with you watching my every move. Excuse me. Could you back off, please? My lord can't enjoy his drink if he's being pestered. Kale breathes a sigh of relief seeing they don't suspect a thing about the stolen dragon. After all, who would ever point the finger at someone known as the trash of the Count's family? Besides, they were wearing the secret organization's uniform. so technically they've got nothing to worry about, right? I bet you guys would love to see the look on the Viscount's face too. He must be absolutely fuming. Taylor Stan was next in line to inherit the Stan Marquisate, but thanks to his younger brother, Vinian, he ended up paralyzed from the waist down and was completely booted from the line of succession. That's why he dug into whether there was a cure for his condition, until one day he stumbled upon a mysterious book that talked about restoration and a rock tower. Taylor started connecting the dots and remembered a place that fit that exact description. Though luckily for our main crew, they're heading straight for that very same spot. Kale's getting a bit worried. They need to get a move on so they can kick back in Puzzle City, since they'll find a power there pretty similar to his indestructible shield. You see, what Taylor is actually after is the mystical vitality of the heart. If our main guy gets his hands on that power, his heart rate will spike, making his indestructible shield heaps stronger. At the end of the day, he doesn't feel bad about snatching that power from Taylor, since it wouldn't have done him any good anyway. In the novel, when he gets it and realizes it doesn't work, he falls into a massive depression that he just never bounces back from. Despite everything he did, he couldn't fend off Vinian's brutal attack. But anyway, it's a long road ahead and our heroes are going to have to set up camp once again. And to everyone's absolute shock, the very next day they found a deer smack bang in front of them. Whoever left those tracks was the one behind it. Choi Han was supposed to be on night watch, but judging by that cheeky smirk on his face, it looks like he knows exactly who did it and is just playing dumb. He knows full well it has to be the dragon, but for now, they've decided to just turn a blind eye. The only catch is, everywhere they went, an offering would always rock up the very next day. Bloody hell, he just won't give up. He wouldn't actually follow us all the way to the capital, would he, young master? Isn't the one doing this just absolutely charming? It's like a sweet little kid who hasn't lost their innocence. Jeez, I just wanted him to toughen up so he could wipe out the Marquis' entire family. But hey, maybe it'll work in our favor. The Henachus territory will end up being a much more peaceful place for everyone. Our heroes have finally made it to Puzzle City. Shortly after, Hans sorted out some accommodation, just in time to celebrate the massive Rock Tower Festival. Oh, young master, there's a massive story here, even if you don't care. You and I both know the best is yet to come. Come along with me, because today we're going to find out how a whole city like Puzzle ended up getting abandoned by God. No one really knew for sure why they were left behind. But back in the day, when the locals started building these stone towers, they did it as a kind of prayer to get their wishes granted. Sadly, all their begging was for nothing, since there's not a single temple in Puzzle to worship him. I mean, why worship God if he won't even listen to ya? They say the villagers built rock towers instead of temples because they stood for a promise. Seeing as if your wish actually came true, you had to knock the tower down. Basically, it's a metaphor saying that if you want to achieve something, you've really got to put the work in. Kale was pretty surprised by these folks. They don't believe in God, but they're aiming for something higher, like personal growth. But the history lesson will have to wait, because the kiddies are starving and they're demanding their guardian feed 'em right now. So as soon as Hans heads off to feed the little furballs, pay attention here, because our main guy tells Ron to go get some rest, but Ron asks if Choi Han is heading off in 2 days. It's not like he wants to tag along out of obligation or anything. He just wants to chat with him for as long as possible. But Kale reassures Ron that he shouldn't worry. They'll catch up again once they hit the capital. After all, Ron and Beercroc need to meet up to travel together to Rosalind's kingdom. Since Ron just wants everyone to get there safe and sound, he quietly heads off after hearing his young master's words. And while Hans goes to grab some grub for the starving kiddies, our hero starts thinking about the mysterious power he's going to get. They say the vitality of the heart was left behind by an old bloke who died of natural causes. But since he reckoned this power was a curse, Kale's gonna have to figure out the truth for himself. So the second Hans gets back with the cat food, his master orders him to come with him straight away. They've got to go check out the stone tower. That's why he tells Hans to get everything sorted for the trip. The old man built his tower right where the winds clash, so it'll be bloody fascinating to find out what wish he wanted so badly. While our heroes head out to get this mission done, Kale spots Taylor next to him, hanging out with the priestess, Cage. Taylor asks her why she dragged him all the way out here, to which Cage replies that she's been having super weird dreams lately, showing her that right in this exact spot they'd meet their savior, who'd act in some pretty mysterious ways. You and I both know that since Cage is a priestess, she hears God's will, but Taylor couldn't care less about that right now. He just wants an ice-cold beer, which sounds brilliant to Cage, because they're both already pretty hammered. And just like that, this quirky pair happily heads off to enjoy a few good drinks. Now that Kale knows what they're really after, he's just going to have to dodge them so they don't mess up his plans. However, Hans warns him that the bloke is the Marquis's son, leaving Kale completely blindsided by the news. He asks how he knows that, and Hans tells him that memorizing info on the nobles is just part of his basic job. Plus, he was easy to spot because his wheelchair has the snake symbol that represents the Stan family. Kale tells his butler that he's not as useless as he thought, though it's best to just ignore them for now anyway. Shortly after, our crew arrives at the center of the city, which turns out to be pretty underwhelming. It's literally just a square packed with heaps of stone towers. Choi Han, though, is looking incredibly deep in thought. It's like he really wants to make a wish, probably to finally head back to his homeland once and for all. So as soon as he's done praying, Choi Han wants to ask his master a question. Let's see. What does he want to ask me? Tell me, what do you want to know? But fair warning, I'm not making any wishes. If you ask me, it's better to live without false hope. It's way more comfortable to live without getting your hopes up. After this, Choi tells him he'll get straight back to his report. The dragon's been following them all the way to the city, and even though Kaylee tells Choi to ignore it, he can't help but wonder where it's hiding. Over this entire trip, they haven't managed to catch sight of it even once. The very next day, all the prep for their next mission is completely sorted. Our main guy is only taking Choi Han with him, and while some are a bit ticked off by the call, others like Hans are going to take advantage of the day off to muck around with the kiddies. And so the expedition kicks off. But stick with me to see what our main guy is planning to pull off today. Settle in, mate, because you and I are about to see that it's not all just elaborate plans. When you're staring down a mountain, sometimes all you can do is wait at the entrance. Our main guy brought Choi Han along for one simple reason. He never questions orders, no matter how bloody absurd or dangerous they might seem. As our boys push forward, Choi Han reminds his liege that he's heading off tomorrow, so he's got to give him a dead serious warning. Ron is an extremely dangerous bloke. Kale's actually surprised that Choi Han is being so upfront about it. Since Choi knows his liege is pretty sharp, he can't wrap his head around how he hasn't picked up on Ron's dodgy behavior. Kale definitely notices the plot holes, like why he didn't bring Ron along for the dragon rescue. But if there's one thing he's an absolute master at, it's lying through his teeth. So he plays completely dumb, claiming he had no clue how strong Ron actually was, though he swears there's absolutely nothing to worry about. Truth be told, those two are cut from the exact same cloth. In fact, Kale flips the script and asks Choi why he didn't do anything when he first discovered Ron's insane strength. Choi's left totally gobsmacked, fumbling for an answer, to which Kale calmly points out that that is the exact same reason for him. Ron has never laid a finger on him. At the end of the day, he's been his butler for over 18 years, always fiercely loyal and playing his part to absolute perfection. Of course, He completely gets that Choi only warned him out of genuine concern for his safety. But going by that exact same logic, Choi himself would be a pretty dangerous bloke to keep around too. So no matter how absolutely lethal they might be deep down, to our protagonist, they're both essentially in the same boat. Ron is just his butler, plain and simple, just like Choi is a hired hand working off a debt of honor. So enough chit-chat. They better get a move on and reach the spot. Meanwhile, Ron asks Choi if he caught what Kale just said. He's looked after Kale since he was a little tacker, even changing his nappies. It's almost like he raised him himself. Choi couldn't care less, though he's just going to do exactly what his liege ordered. He won't let anyone take a single step past this point. Ron chuckles, thinking his young master's gotten a lot more stubborn as he's grown up. Meanwhile, our main guy finally reaches his destination. The only snag is that the entrance is bloody tiny. Bugger it. I'm gonna get my flashy outfit all covered in dirt today. So, after dragging his clothes through the dirt to get inside, Choi notices that the wind is howling with brutal force, strong enough to rip the walls down at any second. But enough beating around the bush. It's finally time to claim a brand new power. Out of nowhere, the little dragon pops up, begging him not to do it because he's terrified he'll get hurt, but the indestructible shield has already been activated. Kale looks pretty ticked off that the little dragon actually followed him, but there's zero time to argue right now. He's got to step on it, since the wind shifts its intensity every 3 hours. Right now is the absolute perfect window as the gale is at its weakest. Now watch closely here, mate, because the storm is starting to howl like crazy with every single step he takes. It feels like he's trying to push through a wall as thick as solid steel. Even so, as he gets closer, he starts hearing a voice, one exactly like the bloke he heard when he scored his indestructible shield. The old bloke tells him flat out that he refuses to hand over his power, since he basically ended up betraying his closest mates. He reckons he's a truly despicable bloke. All he ever wanted was for absolutely everyone to survive, but he failed to protect them, and that's exactly why he could never finish his stone tower. Kale was expecting the old guy to sound super intimidating, but he just turned out to be a massive sook. I know it sounds a bit harsh, but Kale couldn't give two hoots about his tragic backstory. He just wants this power so he can survive. Well, Kale pulled it off. Though he's feeling pretty let down, he was expecting some majestic stone tower, but it honestly looks basic as anything. As he carefully pulls the very last rock off the tower, a blinding flash of light completely floods the cave. The old bloke spilled his guts about his entire tragic past, but since Kale couldn't care less, I reckon I'll skip over it for you too. Rowan already reckons Kelly is an absolute weirdo, so he's just staring at the whole scene, completely gobsmacked by what he's watching. Our main guy actually pulled it off. Now he's carrying the insanely powerful vitality of the heart. This is going to let him max out his shield's power. And the best part, he bags a passive skill that lets him heal way faster than any normal bloke. Once he's finally out of the cave, our protagonist bumps right into the stubborn little dragon. Still cool as a cucumber, he casually asks if the little guy wants to tag along on his journey. Rayon actually feels a bit sorry for him, thinking such a weak human definitely needs some protection, even though he swears up and down that he despises humans. But as he heads back down to where Choi is waiting, he spots the grass rustling. Yeah, it's pretty bloody obvious he just scored himself a new ally. Choi looks absolutely horrified and asks what on earth happened to him, since it looks like he just chucked himself halfway down the mountain. Later that night, just on the outskirts of Puzzle City, Priestess Cage is about to land herself in some serious hot water. Those crazy voices are yammering in her head, and she starts kicking absolutely everything in sight. Mate, you and I both know things are about to get completely out of hand. Come with me. Taylor asks what's going on, steps out onto the balcony, and bursts out laughing when he sees that the ridiculous stone tower is actually real. That's why she asks Taylor to knock one down. What's more, the deity herself has entrusted this to him. He absolutely freezes. What exactly does his mate mean? Cage has to be honest. Her goddess usually talks a load of rubbish, but this time she's dead serious. She warned him that this very second would be the turning point that would change their lives forever, but she stressed that the final choice was entirely up to him. If he wanted a quiet life, he should never knock down that stone tower. Because maybe they didn't notice, but hidden inside the structure is an envelope. The real reason it was built in the first place. Cage asks her lord what he plans to do. Taylor, full of determination, orders his ally to smash that tower straight away. Taylor has never wanted a peaceful existence, because to be completely honest, his path has never been a walk in the park. As soon as he gets the feeling back in his legs, he'll keep pushing forward until he absolutely destroys his bloody noble family. The letter reveals to Taylor that the power he'd been desperately searching for wasn't the right one to heal his legs. Besides, whoever wrote this knows full well that he only wanted to get his strength back so he could usurp the family throne. And even though his legs are still useless, his mind, his arms, and his sheer willpower are still completely intact. So his destiny will depend on the firstborn of the Stan family. Taylor tells Cage that there's nothing left for them here. Don't blink now. They have to head back to the capital quick smart, or they won't make it in time for the massive royal event. And while the two of them share a knowing laugh, our little kittens finish their job and head right back to their master. At the crack of dawn, while Choi Han gets ready to leave, our protagonist asks him if he's really just going to take off like that. And since Choi Han is a bit oblivious, Kale hands him a bunch of supplies for his trip, a few gold coins, and healing potions. He tells him if they get in the way he can just chuck 'em, so it's best they say their goodbyes right now. The whole crew says their goodbyes to Choi Han, feeling like they've gotten bloody close over this time. Even our little dragon, who shares a bit of his protective mana with him. Our swordsman says goodbye, promising that they'll run into each other again on the streets of the capital. A day after his departure, Kale notices something a bit off. The felines are whispering amongst themselves, so he asks them if they've seen the little dragon. From their dodgy reactions, he figures there's no going back now. Suddenly, a carriage pulls up right in front of their campsite, but despite looking like an absolute wreck, belongs to the handsome Taylor Stan. Looks like Kale is about to land himself in some serious hot water. Yeah, I know. Things are getting messy. Now he's not only got the dragon tailing him, but this bizarre pair as well. Fate is tough on good-looking blokes. Taylor tells Kale that, if their presence makes him uncomfortable, they can just rack off without beating around the bush. At the end of the day, he's on his own, but Kay replies that there's no need for that, since he doesn't actually own this land. So he sticks out his hand and properly introduces himself to the son of Stan. The noble apologizes, explaining that his physical condition stops him from standing up, which is something Kale already knew. Of course, Taylor introduces his mate, Cage, mentioning that she belongs to the clergy. Our protagonist knows damn well she's trying to get herself excommunicated, since she can't stand the temple's strict dogmas. The young count knows exactly where they're heading, so he orders Hans to give them whatever help they need. And while they set up camp, maybe he'll offer them a decent drop of liquor to liven up the freezing night. And if Kale is helping out his new guests, it's purely to dodge any sort of problematic relationship down the track. That's why he tasks his knight with protecting them, while ordering the felines to keep their gobs completely shut about what happened. The next morning, our handsome protagonist wakes up curious about the massive bloody racket going on outside. Hans rushes over and explains that Lord Taylor has simply misread the situation. Without a clue what's going on, Kale walks straight over to the group to ask what the hell is happening. Taylor solemnly apologizes to him, assuming that this weird offering is proof that his enemies have tracked him down. It clearly represents a serious threat to the rightful heir of the Stan family. Unable to admit that it's actually the work of a guardian dragon, Kale orders Bierkrok to cook up a delicious wild boar. This happens quite a bit, thanks to a silent little helper who brings them grub every single day. Though he's so secretive that we'll barely ever see him around here again, trust me, the best is yet to come. Brace yourselves, because this is where you and I kick off our journey to the capital as soon as the awkwardness fades. Taylor asks Kale if they can travel together. Kale tells them it's no worries at all, mainly because he's obviously planning to cash in on that favor later on. But Cage is burning to know something, so she asks Kale straight out, since she gets the feeling he's a bloke who doesn't believe in God whatsoever. Kale replies that she's spot on, he's an atheist. Taylor asks his mate what's gotten into her and why she was being so nosy, to which Cage replies that she's just got a really weird gut feeling. It's almost as if the god of death himself is stroking the back of her neck out of pure pity. Our heroes kept on with their journey, and the day before they arrived, Taylor asked our protagonist if he seriously loved his booze that much. He'd heard that he has to drink every single day or he gets cranky. Actually, this is his way of thanking him for all the perks he hooked them up with during the trip. So he'd love to share a few drinks before they go their separate ways for good. But Kale isn't buying that for a second, and he asks Taylor what he exactly wants. The heir is just after an opinion. He wants to know exactly what kind of bloke he is in our protagonist's eyes. Kale answers that he hasn't got a clue why he wants to head to the capital, but if he's walking straight into the lion's den, he's definitely going to need a massive pile of cash. Taylor feels a bit sheepish. He didn't think it was that obvious, but he admits Kale is dead right. Now pay attention, because this is where we see who he decides to trust. To travel on the down low, he needs cash, and he knows Kale isn't the type to stab a mate in the back. Kale asks Taylor if they're planning on sneaking into the capital by going through the temple, because if they use that route to sneak in, sooner or later his brother Vinian is going to find out they were there. So he pitches them a plan. If they stick around for one more night, they can hitch a ride hidden in his carriage, while the other group acts as decoys the next day. Taylor asks our protagonist why he's going to so much trouble for them. Kale can't exactly confess that if he takes over as Marquis of the Stan family, he won't have to stress about the greedy members of his own family anymore. So he just casually replies that he's doing it out of pity. I mean, isn't it tragic that a bloke who's paralyzed has to give it his all just to stay alive? Taylor thanks him for his sympathy. He reckons he really needed someone who'd shoot straight like that. However, Kale warns him there's a catch. From here on out, they have to completely forget absolutely everything they've seen. So Kay suggests that to prove they're legit, they need to make a sacred oath before the god of death. After all, a bloke like him doesn't believe in empty promises. So the second Cage switches into priestess mode and preps her spells, they swear on the name of the god of death that they'll forget having any ties to Kaylee Hinatusi. Right, so now that the deal is sealed, it's the perfect time to knock back a few drinks. Tell me you wouldn't do the exact same thing, because a good cold one fixes everything. Kale just brushes off their friendly banter and tells them to get drinking. The next morning, our travelers are only 2 hours away from hitting the capital. Because of that, Taylor takes the chance to spill a few more details to Kale about the massive event, since they'll be celebrating His Majesty's 50th birthday with an absolutely massive festival. But our protagonist is sweating bullets, because he knows there's going to be a terrorist attack right at that exact moment. He's feeling completely overwhelmed, knowing the future ahead of time is putting a massive mental strain on him. Even so, Kale tells Taylor he can tell this isn't just your run-of-the-mill festival, and Taylor warns him to watch his back around the prince. He's a bloke with the gift of the gab, and he was the one who pulled the strings to get all the successors of the noble families to show up. Kale knows bloody well that the prince is an absolute expert at sweet-talking and manipulating people. That's exactly how he managed to play Choi Han, pretending to be a close mate of the hero. And Choi Han, being completely clueless to his bad intentions, fell right into the trap and became just another one of his servants. The prince doesn't usually use people just for his own greedy gain or power, but rather he does it for the greater good of the kingdom. And even though Taylor tells him to stay on his toes, Kale reckons there's nothing to worry about, since he's planning to lay low anyway. That answer actually gets a laugh out of Cage and Taylor, because there's no way someone that flashy is ever going to fly under the radar. But Kale promises them not to stress about it if things go pear-shaped. He'll just have to use the exact same wordplay as the prince, suddenly, just like that. Our protagonists have finally rolled into the capital. So right before making his move, Kale hands a gift over to Taylor. Stick with me, guys, because the real show is just about to start. At the exact moment, the Capitol guards rock up demanding to check the carriage. Brace yourselves, because today we'll see our main character rocking up completely smashed, daring the guards to search for whatever they want. Not a single one of them is going to find anyone else. Since the guards didn't find anything dodgy, they let our boys just carry on their way. And this was all possible because Kale had an artifact that turned his mates completely invisible. Getting closer to the west side of the capital, Kale lets Taylor and Cage know that Ron's going to be escorting them from here on out. So their paths split right here. And while the crew heads off, our protagonist shacks up in a palace where he's greeted by a bunch of nervous butlers, since they all firmly reckon Kale is absolute trash. Though Kale tells them not to worry and to just ask Hans if they've got any questions. He completely trusts the bloke's skills from this point on. So once he's back in his room, Hans lets him know that Ron's finished up his job. Because of that, Kale orders him to head off and bring him some grub a bit later. On top of settling into his new room, he decides to crack the window open because, to be honest, a certain little mate can pop in whenever he wants. After all, since he supplied the ingredients for their meal, he's going to be the guest of honor this time. Kale knows the hardest part is just about to kick off, so he'd rather get a bit of shut-eye before it all begins. When someone suddenly knocks on the door, Kale starts panicking. Choi Han shouldn't be rocking up yet. Pay attention here, because even sprinting at top speed, it'd take him more than 3 days to get there. But when he opens the door, he sees Choi Han carrying a bloke who turns out to be Locke, the heir of the Wolf clan, tagged along by Princess Rosalind, going by his terrible fever. It's a dead giveaway he's about to transform. At this stage, there's absolutely nothing they can do to stop the transformation. So Kale tells him to just shut his eyes and rest. Everything's going to be all right. Choi Han asks him what's going on. Since he gave him every medicine under the sun but nothing worked, Kale just tells him to chill out. If they trust him, it'll all pan out fine. Though our hero's pretty puzzled, since this was supposed to happen a year in the future. Could this be another consequence of completely changing how the story plays out? But there are other issues, seeing as Rosalind is wondering where such a massive amount of mana is coming from. This is because Rayon, all camouflaged up thanks to his force field, leaks a bit of his energy toward the mage out of pure curiosity, right until his dad orders him to back off immediately. Rayon bolts instantly. Rosalind asks what on earth just happened, but Kale tells her there's no time. Their main priority is getting Locke's transformation under control. Kale's just realized something, though. And I bet you guys already guessed it. They rocked up so fast by using teleportation magic, proving she's one hell of a mage. After she confirms this, she mentions she read up on werewolf transformations once, but none ever had symptoms this nasty. Kale explains that this is just what happens during their very first transformation. Beastmen go through such a brutal physical change that, once they get through it, they can use it as a ridiculously powerful weapon. So the second Hans gets back, Kale orders him to take Locke to the underground courtyard and make bloody sure no one spots them on the way. Because of that, he warns Choi Han and Rosalind that they might end up as Locke's punching bags if he completely loses the plot. They tend to get super aggressive, and normally it's up to their families to protect them and stop them from hurting themselves. So today, you guys are going to have to step up and act like his parents, or if that's too awkward, just be his older siblings. That way, once they're all down in the underground courtyard, he tells the guys they'll have to hold him down for about 2 hours while the whole process runs its course. A piece of cake for Choi Han, being an absolute powerhouse of a warrior. Suddenly, Locke starts shivering, kicking off the change. But don't you worry, mates. Kale is totally safe. All thanks to the little dragon whipping up a protective shield that can block out any noise from the outside. Kale's pretty blown away that Rowan is mastering magic at such a crazy fast pace. It'll come in super handy down the track. While they're waiting, he asks On and Hong if they've already gone through this. The little kiddies answer no, since no adult ever taught them about it. Since they're purebloods too, their transformation is bound to be just as terrifying. And just like that, we find out that amongst the beastmen, there are wolves, tigers, bears, and whales. Come along with me and watch as Kale promises the kittens that if they ever lose control, they can always run straight to him for help. According to the original novel, Locke's transformation triggered because he lost someone incredibly important to him. We're talking about the healer, Pendrick. His tragic death was supposed to remind Locke of his uncle, who, as the former chief of the wolf tribe, would have caused Locke to absolutely lose his mind and try to smash everything in his path to pieces. While Choi Han and Rosalind face off against Locke, Kale tells the little kittens to keep a close eye on the young wolf's movements. Since he's a beastman, his attacks are completely wild and unpredictable, moving entirely on pure instinct. And even though they're technically from totally different species, they can watch each other to pick up on their natural fighting techniques, while Rosalind unleashes her massive magical power. Kale points out to Rowan how Rosalind uses her magic to avoid hurting her opponent, and how Choi Han actually uses his aura to protect the wolf boy instead of just bashing him. So after 2 solid hours of going toe-to-toe, the young wolf finally turns back into his human form, but he's so completely wrecked from the fight that he passes out straight away. Our main character tells him he did a bloody good job, that he can finally rest now, and that it's all over. While Choi Han carries Locke off to somewhere safe, Kale hands Rosalind a healing potion to say cheers for her massive help, and then pulls Choi Han aside for an urgent, private chat. While Hans and Ron look after the wolf boy, Choi Han explains that everything went exactly to plan. He went to the right city and tracked down the merchant group heading towards the kingdom's capital, who, just like his young master reckoned they would, were on the hunt for 2 seasoned mercenaries for protection. Rosalind was right there among them, fitting Kale's description to a T. She'd been on her way to the Wiper Kingdom's magic tower, but had to ditch her plans halfway after surviving a sketchy assassination attempt. So since she was also heading straight for the capital, Choi Han decided to be a top bloke and actually made the first move to strike up a conversation with her. This honestly shocked our main character, because in the original novel, Rosalind always had her guard up and flat out refused to talk to strangers, and Choi Han definitely wasn't the type to approach anyone first after that awful incident at Harris Village. The only reason he did it was because he was busting a gut to pay off his debt to Kaylee as quickly as possible. But get a load of this, because Choi Han dropped a massive bombshell right before they reached the village. He figured out that the guard was actually a beastman. Because of that, the merchant group, wanting to stick clear of any drama, found out there was another village at the top of the hill, so they sent one of their reps up there to sort out some business instead. But after a few hours went by without a single peep from their bloke, things started looking pretty sketchy. the whole group decided to hike up to the village to suss out what was going on, only to find out right then and there that the place was getting absolutely wrecked by a gang of ruthless criminals. Our Avenger revealed the group was wearing the symbol of a white star surrounded by 5 red ones. Yep, the exact same secret organization our main character has been keeping a sharp eye on. Now, according to the original novel, they weren't even supposed to be the ones showing up there. Instead, a bunch of assassins were meant to rock up, find the place trashed, and try to snatch 10 wolf kids, the only survivors from the attack. But the only reason those bloody villains didn't get away with it was because Locke stood right in their way. Cale genuinely has no clue what's going on anymore. The novel said Locke was supposed to hide, but you and I both know that Cale's actions are completely throwing Destiny off the rails. Choi Han goes on to explain that he tried to stop them, and the bloke running the show was absolute scum, literally drinking the blood of the wolf tribe. A dangerous mage that Cale recognizes straight away, since he's the nutjob who's supposed to plan the massive terrorist attack in the capital. Our main character wonders why on earth this sick, bloodthirsty mage would bother kidnapping the wolf kids instead of just finishing them off. Choi Han bitterly admits that he couldn't capture a single one of the enemies because the second he even tried, they'd just off themselves on the spot, and the few left standing dragged that rotten mage away to protect him, though right before they bailed, the sorcerer left him with a fairly nasty warning. He reckoned it was a damn shame to lose such perfect seeds like them, and even though Cale hasn't got a clue what that actually means, Choi Han wraps up his story, explaining that Rosalind teleported the survivors straight to the inn where their merchant group is crashing. And seeing as they've now got 10 little wolf kids entirely under their care, mate, trust me, at this rate our main character is going to end up running a bloody daycare center. Come check out this absolute madness with me, because Kayleigh asks Choi Han if he wants to know who they are, why they're doing all this, and how a bloke like him has all the bloody answers. For that reason, he tells Choi Han that he's only going to reveal 2 truths to him. But of course, if he wants to find out what they are, he'll have to tag along with him straight to the temple of the god of death. Cale is dead straight with Choi Han because by stepping up to reveal these truths, he's putting his own life on the line. Mate, he might have brushed off Priestess Cage's vow before just for a bit of a laugh. But making a vow with the god of death means putting your bloody life down as collateral. Right before stepping into the ritual, Cale tells Choi Han that the first truth is he hasn't got a clue about the secret organization's endgame, though from the look on Choi Han's face, it's dead obvious he doesn't believe a single word of it. That's exactly why he dragged him to this temple, so he can confirm with absolute certainty that he's shooting straight with him. The priest hands them some special documents stating that this message is for the one offering up their life, while their companion will be caressed by the hands of death. When that moment comes, they'll have to make a vow. But if they break that promise, the bloke who offered his life is going to pay the ultimate price. The ritual has begun. Pay close attention here, because if Cale lies to Choi Han, he'll drop dead right then and there. Cale wonders just how much he should actually spill to Choi Han, like the fact that he's a Korean bloke who got transported straight into the world of his favorite novel, and that he only knows what happens in the first 5 volumes, knowing full well that the whole world is about to turn into an absolute war zone, and all he's doing is scheming to live a quiet, peaceful life. Any answer in that scenario would just make Choi Han back away from him completely. Cale explains to Choi Han that the first thing is he doesn't know the true identity of that secret organization, since it was never revealed in what he read of the novel. And the second truth is that he absolutely despises that group and wants them wiped off the face of the earth. Choi Han asks him how he could hate them so fiercely when he doesn't even know them, to which Cale replies by bringing up rumors, like the dragon incident and the mess with Locke, as proof of their sick deeds. Kale comes clean and confesses that his ultimate dream is to just live comfortably, so making his brother bathe in the air is his main game plan. That's the reason he had to rock up to this event. Against his will, since the organization is plotting to stir up a massive bloody conflict in the capital. I know exactly what you're thinking. He couldn't let Basin get hurt, so he had to step in and stop the catastrophe. So his plan is to sort the mess out as quietly as possible and head straight back home. I might not be able to tell you more right now, but I'll give you one more truth. Under no circumstances do I ever plan on hurting you. Choi Han trusts his young master's word. Because of that, he asks him to make a promise. If he keeps his promise, he swears to trust him with his life. Choi Han wants to get back at those bastards no matter what it takes. Never in my life have I felt so much pure hatred towards a person or an organization. So if you ever dig up any info on who they really are, promise me you'll tell me first. Our main bloke assures him that he will, locking it in with the ironclad vow of the god of death to wrap up the ritual. As soon as they hop into the carriage, Choi Han asks his master if by some chance they run into the bloody mage who caused all this chaos, he's allowed to just finish him off. And since Kay couldn't care less, he tells him that if he wants to wipe him out, he can do it whenever he damn well pleases. The next morning, that terrifying old bloke Ron comes back to bug him, offering his usual tea, which God only knows why the hell he's always serving it to him. But this time around, he actually wants to ask his young master for a solid. Trying not to be rude, he asks for 2 days off, which sounds like an absolute ripper of an idea to our protagonist, who tells him to take him without a second thought. Bloody brilliant. 2 whole days without this crazy old coot breathing down my neck. Hoping Ron doesn't even show his face, Kale tosses him a couple of gold coins to grab some grub. Ron hasn't got a clue what's going on. He dedicated his entire life to faithfully serving his young master. But it's time to get right back into the action. Because if those people make it to the Western continent, it's going to be utter chaos. Ron asks if it doesn't bother him that he's just taking off like this. In fact, he was actually planning on bailing without saying a bloody word. But he wanted to hear what his young master would say first, seeing as he could just take the cash and never come back for the rest of his life. But Kale tells him he knows him too well. And trust me, you and I both know that if Ron really wanted to leg it, he never would have given him a heads up, something Kale already saw coming thanks to the novel. Ron reckons his young master is dead right. He seems to know him even better than his own son does. Come along and check out this plan. Kale promises his master he'll head straight back the second they hit the royal palace, and the moment Ron heads off. The next morning, there's a knock at the door. It's Hans, rocking up to bring him his tea. Following Ron's orders, right as Choi Han pops out of nowhere to let him know Locke's feeling a fair bit better. So our bloke shifts his focus to his next job, since he'd promised Billows they'd catch up for a cuppa. But his plans are going to have to wait, thanks to a surprise meeting. Wait, what? What on earth are they banging on about? Oh, young master, please. It's about that formal invitation you got from the nobles out in the Northwest region. But before heading off to that little get-together, our boy Kale has to have a chat with someone in particular. Kale knows Rosalind is sharp as a tack. She's definitely sus on that weird manner she felt the other day, so he's going to go see her to confirm her suspicions. Because of that, he orders Hans to throw open the glass doors, since he's expecting a very special guest. Choi Han explains to Kale that they're taking bloody good care of Locke. They're taking turns keeping an eye on him, plus the cat kids are chipping in to help, though, honestly, they're only doing it so they can study him up close and beat him in the future. Then, pay attention to this bit, because Kaylee asks Choi Han if he still wants to absolutely wreck that dropkick blood mage. If he does, he'll tell him exactly where to find the bloke. He's going to have to hold his horses, though, because first, he needs a private word with Rosalind. Kale asks the mage to take a seat so they can have a proper, no-nonsense chat. So he asks his awesome new mate to come on in and introduce himself. Just like that, Round waltzes into the room, drops his magic field, and straight up demands to be fed. And since our bloke thinks that's a brilliant idea, he tells Rosalind to grab a seat and have a feed while they talk. Rosalind mentions that the rumors about him being total trash don't exactly seem true. I mean, otherwise. How do you explain him cruising around with the dragon? Kale reckons Rosalind is one seriously gutsy woman, since other mages would be shaking in their boots, praising the dragon and begging it to show them how to use its massive magical power. Rosalind looks Kale dead in the eye and tells him she came to ask 3 questions, though one of them has already been answered. She wonders why he invited her to crash at his place, to which Kale casually replies that she's traveling with Choi Han, and if she tried anything dodgy, well, he's got Rayon as a bodyguard. And her final question is, why on earth is he speaking to her so formally, when he's the noble? Kale explains that even though Rosalind's a princess, she treats everyone pretty casually. But when he's talking to a mage, he makes sure to use proper, formal respect. You guys know how it is, she sees herself more as a mage than a noble. So Kale suggests they just drop the formalities from here on out, plus, right before heading off from his place. She thanks him for saving her people, even though, honestly, Kale only did it so they wouldn't become a massive headache for him later. But the second Rosalind reaches over to grab some snags, Round stops her dead in her tracks. The little dragon warns her not to even try it, unless she's got a death wish. Kale tells Rosalind to take it easy, gesturing that the little dragon is barely 4 years old. He's just a moody little kid who cracks it over absolutely everything. So after finishing up their feed, our protagonist heads back to meet up with Choi Han, who's feeling pretty bloody anxious, with this meeting with the Northwest nobles coming up. They all know the original Kale's absolute garbage reputation, and they're terrified of whatever massive scene he's going to cause. Meanwhile, we cut to the outskirts of Count Wheelsman's mansion. They're a noble family without a massive fortune, but they've managed to set up some seriously important diplomatic ties with the powerhouse Hennetus family. Because of that, to make sure it's a win-win for everyone, our protagonist plans on staying on young Eric Wheelsman's good side, even if he doesn't actually give a toss about all these stuck-up formalities. But the moment the meeting kicks off, Eric straight up apologizes to him, knowing full well how much Kale absolutely loathes this kind of formal nonsense. Now, Eric might come across as a strict bloke with a super chill temperament, but deep down, he's the kind of guy who stresses out way too much over absolutely everything. Turns out of the top 10 most influential families, the ones sitting in this room, including the Hennetus crew, are the only ones who haven't teamed up with any other faction. Because of that, the big shot factions are trying to rip the power away from these smaller families, just to milk them for everything they're worth. Luckily for our protagonist, since the Hennetus family are the top dogs at this table, he's got absolutely zero to worry about. The nobles set up this whole meeting to agree that they'd rock up as a group to pay their respects to the crown prince. And even though they know bloody well he couldn't care less about any of this, they assure him that just showing his face will be more than enough. Really, all he has to do is knock back a few drinks and tag along. Trust me on this one. Mates, things are about to get seriously interesting. All right, buckle up. Today we're diving into how Kaylee pulls Choi Han aside to make good on his promise after wrapping up his chores. But just to stop Hans from sticking his nose in, he asks Choi Han to sneak back in right through the window. Although this time, they've got a new mate tagging along as soon as night falls and little Rayon wakes up. Choi Han steps into the room and asks Rayon how he's planning to hide himself, since he's supposed to be able to turn into a human. Why turn invisible? Rayon fires back that he absolutely hates humans, and as a great dragon, he's way too proud for that. Hold on a sec. Who told him he was so awesome? that bloke over there did. Dragons are bloody incredible. Right as Rayon goes invisible, Choi Han chucks a question at his young master. Is he supposed to just chuck him on his back and jump? But Kale tells him nah. That's exactly what they've got dragon powers for. See, told ya I was awesome. Mate, he sounds pretty full of himself, but you gotta admit it's badass.
Right.
The second the boys hit the central plaza, Rayon drops his magic from our redhead, and then asks him to tag along. Choi Han was absolutely blown away seeing how lively the nightlife actually is. Kale asks the dragon to chuck up a soundproof barrier and explains to Choi Han all about these magic bombs. They're insanely destructive weapons with heaps of variations, though they're also a massive pain to try and handle. And get a load of this, because a bunch of these bombs are set to go off in just a few days. In the original novel, Choi Han and Rosalind actually managed to track down 5 of them and defuse them. But since the story's changed, he can't just kick back and assume there won't be any more of these nasty surprises. They could be stashed in any random corner, or even camouflaged right under the noses of the locals. And even though they're packing a massive concentration of mana, they were designed so your average mage wouldn't even detect them. Choi Han asks him, so how exactly are you planning to find them? Simple, because we've got him.
Yep, I can do it.
Even though it's a massively annoying chore to pull off. The Great Rayon, acting as the ultimate tracker, asks Choi Han to team up and hunt them down. The most likely spot they'd plant them is right in the central plaza, since that's exactly where the biggest crowds gather. So from now on, they're going to have to sweep for them every single night without raising any red flags whatsoever. But here's the catch. If they do find them, they can't just disarm them right away. They've got to wait and do it on the exact day of the attack. Explains to Choi Han that tracking down those bombs will lead them straight to the real culprit. However, the real make or break moment for the search will be the day before, and since security is going to be absolutely tight, Kale's handing over a special little gift to Choi Han, that magic jamming sphere the cats were hiding. So they better get cracking, because this whole mess is seriously no joke. Fast forward through 2 straight nights of intense searching, and Kale wakes up feeling absolutely wrecked from the lack of sleep. And to top it all off, the one knocking on his door is the little bloke, back from his trip with a letter from Billios, asking our young master out for a drink. Ron casually lets his young master know that he's going to have to rock up at the royal palace pretty soon. Because right before the king kicks off the festival, the nobles are expected to have a meet and greet with the crown prince. Kale honestly couldn't care less about any of that, since his one and only priority is flying under the radar. Just then, Ron asks his master if he can tag along on the trip alongside Choi Han. The old servant drops the bomb that a shady outfit called Arm is running the east and looking to expand out west, so he, as the heir to the terrifying Milan family, one of the most notorious assassin clans out there, is holding one hell of a grudge against Arm, meaning his days of serving Kale are definitely numbered. Just as Ron steps out and the kittens wander in, there's another knock at the door. It's the young lad, Locke, who, honestly, despite shaking like a leaf, wants to have a straight-up, no-nonsense chat with young Master Kale. He blurts out a massive thank you to Kale for all his help. His jumpy, immature vibe matches his description in the novel to an absolute T. But Kale's not having a bar of it. If he's done with the thank yous, he can just bugger off. If he's actually got something to say, he needs to stand tall, look him dead in the eye, and ask exactly what he wants to know. Locke, suddenly finding his backbone, asks if Kale can help him get his revenge. Cade knows bloody well that werewolves fiercely protect their pack, but even so, he shuts him down with a flat-out no. At the end of the day, with all these high-maintenance allies hanging around, our redhead's dream of a peaceful retirement is looking seriously doomed. Stick around for this, because our mate can't just help Locke out of the blue, so he offers him a deal. He's got to come back and spell out exactly what he needs help with and what he's bringing to the table. Once he's got the answers to those two questions, they can have another chat. The next day, the big moment arrives, and our main guy rocks up to the palace in the capital. While he's wondering where his noble mates are, a guest nobody saw coming makes an appearance. And right on cue with your classic dramatic cliché, up rocks an unbearable noble we'll come to know as Neon Tolls, a useless dropkick who acts as Venian's lapdog. Turns out, the territory where Rayon was trapped actually belonged to this absolute tosser. His family's got a massive chip on their shoulder about the Henatuse clan. Because even though they're next door neighbors, the Henatuse are absolutely loaded. Though now that they're sucking up to the Stan family, they're sitting a bit prettier. Neon specifically told his butler to pull up right there just to have a go at the trash of the Count's family. What a pathetic bloke. He looks like a background extra. And even his insults are just dead set embarrassing. Maybe asking Ron to just get rid of him wouldn't be the worst idea. Neon keeps having a crack at our protagonist, so Round asks his master if he should just wipe him out. Kel tells him not to worry about it. He's just a useless lackey anyway. Suddenly, before Neon can keep running his mouth, Eric, Gilbert, and Amir rock up to cool things down. Eric spots that they're giving his mate a hard time, and Cale gives him the nod to get this idiot out of his face. So he jumps into the conversation and tries to break the ice straight away. Neon looks absolutely livid, but he notices the bloke in front of him has that same icy stare as Venian, so he decides it's best not to push his buttons. Rowan lets Cale know he's recorded the whole thing to use later as blackmail, just to stop him from being a pest again. As the nobles head into the palace, the 5 tables are split up based on where each guest is from. So the families end up indirectly competing with each other, while the high-ranking nobles are seated a few steps up, keeping an eagle eye on every little detail. Right as our boys take a seat, the infamous Vinian arrives on the scene. If Cale isn't thrilled about this, just imagine little Rayon, who's absolutely fuming. Pay attention here, because Cale had already warned him that this bastard was going to show up. Even though he can't finish him off right this second, he promises that, in due time, he'll sort the whole thing out. Despite being right at the next table, the scumbag sends over a message saying it's been ages since they last caught up. Cale replies super politely, but it's all part of his plan. While Venian casually mentions that one of his cabins got raided. That's why, acting like they're best mates, he asks if he's doing all right. Plus, he heard he lost something really valuable and needs to drown his sorrows with a few drinks. Venian suspects the secret organization nicked his dragon, but he can't exactly point the finger at Cale just for being near the property. Because of that, he politely knocks back the invitation to drink. At the end of the day, none of this would have happened if Neon's crew were actually competent. As Venian heads off, he's left wondering where the hell the dragon and his stupid brother are. The celebration rolls on as normal until finally, the Crown Prince, the handsome blonde Alberu Crossman, makes his entrance. But here's where things take a turn, as Taylor and Cage crash the presentation by rocking up totally out of the blue. And while Cale reckons he's gotten away with protecting them, Vinian can only think, what an absolute bastard. How did they keep this hidden from him for so long? Alberu welcomes the Marquis's firstborn. It's an absolute joy to have them here. In the novel, Alberu was scared of the other princes, and it was a known fact that Marquis Stan backed the third one, if Cale didn't dig any deeper. It's because he didn't want to get dragged into any more drama, but it looks like something massive is going down right now. Taylor tells the prince he's really sorry for showing up looking like this, but Alberu replies that he doesn't need to apologize for his condition. At the end of the day, the ones who cling to life are the truly strong ones. Vinian feels like he's being indirectly humiliated by the praise for his brother, while Cale is just soaking up the spectacle. It's bloody brilliant being a spectator to all this drama, but enough of the formalities. It's time to kick off the royal banquet. So the prince decides to sit Taylor and Cage at the absolute perfect table, right at our main guy's table, obviously, where they all share the same rank. Stick around with me to see how this epic story unfolds. That's exactly why he asks his guests to sort out the tables and shift the chairs around. Stick with me here, because since Taylor can't go spilling the beans about his connection to our hero, he's got to play it cool and act normal. He just steps right up in front of the crowd, giving a massive shout out for the invite. Meanwhile, Cale's scratching his head, wondering what the Crown Prince is actually up to by gathering them all in this spot. There's got to be some hidden agenda behind all this. Reckon it's got something to do with that bloody war brewing out west. Or maybe he's already caught wind of the civil war that's about to rip through the Whipper Kingdom. Or maybe his real game plan is just to keep a super close eye on him, knowing full well the second and third princes are hiding something huge. Hell, it could even be the royal family pulling the strings from the shadows. As soon as the Northwestern nobles get up, they rush over to formally introduce themselves to the Crown Prince, who instantly starts singing Eric's praises. Knowing damn well the Wilsman family does a ripper job guarding the northeastern border. Just goes to show this bloke's got the absolute gift of the gab. Matter of fact, when it was Cale's turn, instead of bringing up his dodgy reputation, the prince started buttering him up, saying he's got a real free spirit. But our bloke wasn't about to be outdone, so he fired right back, sucking up to the crown prince and going on about what a stellar job he's doing for the whole kingdom. Cale knows he's hiding something, because the bloke's completely altered his hair and eyes, a neat little trick that's only possible with dragon magic. Listen up closely, because Rayon is flat out warning him to be super careful around this bloke. Cale just can't wrap his head around it. The prince has the exact same strength as any average Joe, plus his mum was one of the king's concubines who died under super dodgy circumstances when he was just a little kid. Maybe that's exactly why Alberu is so bloody. Cautious around the second and third princes, and why the king started playing favorites with him straight off the bat. Maybe he isn't even his real son, or there's some dark secret about his birth. But honestly, it's best to steer clear of the gossip and stay out of trouble. And since our main guy is dead set on snagging a new power known as the Sound of the Wind, he starts picking Amiru's brain about the coastlines in her territory. This ancient power is actually over in the Whipper Kingdom, and it used to belong to some absolute nutjob of a mage hunter. It's a power locked away tight inside the magic tower, which is going to get completely leveled the second that civil war kicks off. Supposedly, Choi Han, that mage hunter, and the Crown Prince himself are the ones who kicked off every single disaster on the Western continent. Doesn't it absolutely blow your mind that the novel still treats these blokes like heroes? And even though that whole area is about to turn into a bloody awful war zone, Cale couldn't give a rat's ass about getting caught up in that mess. He tells young Gilbert he's planning to head off solo, and then, after doing the polite thing and saying his goodbyes to the guests, Amira pulls Cale aside for a quick sec. She noticed the bad blood between him and the other young noble, and she wants to stop him from getting into some stupid punch-up or worse. But mate, he knows exactly what she's really playing at. Amiru and Gilbert are set to inherit this coastal territory with a massive cliff, totally surrounded by lethal whirlpools. A massive headache caused straight up by the sound of the wind. And since they're keen to cash in on that area, they're absolutely desperate to rope in some investors, from what Cale remembers in the novel. He knows Amiru is a solid mate you can trust, so he promises to chuck some money her way. But he tells her to keep her eyes firmly on their own turf, instead of risking all her cash in the Whipper Kingdom. Since Cale's really just looking to lock in a rock-solid diplomatic relationship with Amiru, with the war ready to blow up at any second, he absolutely needs to claim this new power before that mage hunter snatches it up for himself. Just like it went down in the novel, The very next day, Choi Han rolls in with some bloody brilliant news he's managed to track down 4 magic bombs. The downright awful news, though, is that they're planted right in the central plaza, and no matter how bloody hard they looked, they couldn't find a single one besides those 4. According to the novel, there were meant to be 5 bombs in the plaza, and another 5 strapped directly onto people. But now Kale's sweating over whether there's been some nasty little curveball to the plot. He tells Choi Han not to stress, because they're safe for the moment. Those bombs are only going to go off when the bloke who made 'em sends the signal. And jamming that signal, that's an absolute piece of cake for someone with top-tier magic like Rayon or Rosalind, any day of the week. But they've got to make their move on the exact day to bait out the mysterious mage pulling the strings on this whole plot. Plus, he hasn't got the slightest intention of destroying them. Nah, he's planning to use their heavy mana for something else down the track. So backed up by the kittens, he orders the whole crew to keep staking out the area right up until the day it all goes down. To wrap things up, get a load of who decided to track our main bloke down for another catch-up. What he's really after is for him to look after the surviving kids, promising that in exchange for keeping them safe, they'll become a crack squad to watch his back. Get ready, because today we're watching Kale call that plan absolute rubbish. It's a massive contradiction to protect him just to chuck him straight out onto the battlefield. Hearing that, Locke feels like a total bloody idiot for not thinking of it sooner. Though Kale admits that she completely understands the situation, so he'll take his sweet time figuring out what to ask for in return. Of course, our main bloke plans to cash in this massive favor a few months down the track, exactly when a highly valuable ancient power pops up in some incredibly sketchy mountains, where wolves are the only ones capable of scaling that massive structure. If they score that loot, money will never be an issue again, even if the count goes absolutely broke. But until that day comes, Locke can take this bag of coins and treat his family to a cracking good meal. So Kale orders the carriage to take him to the inn where the wolf kids are staying, and the moment they see Locke walk in, they absolutely leg it towards him, buzzing with excitement. Our redhead thanks Billows for looking out for him. And speaking of Billows, he's rocked up with his uncle, a bloke named Odious Flynn. In the original novel, he is the one who links Choi Han with Billows, sparking his nephew's massive ambitions along the way. At first glance, he looks like a really top-notch gentleman. But under the surface, he's utterly ruthless to everyone else. Even so, he still looks out for his nephew Billows, despite him being his brother's illegitimate son. Kale sends everyone upstairs, because it's well and truly time for a few good drinks. Now watch this closely. Billows apologizes to young Kale for losing his cool, but Kale just tells him to get it all off his chest. Being straight up, he admits he was stoked to see his uncle, since he was the only adult who treated him decently growing up. Kale knows full well that Billows teamed up with Choi Han after seeing his crazy strength, and thanks to that mutual trust, he finally found the guts to fight for the heir position in his family's guild. When Billows finishes pouring his heart out to our main bloke, Kale assures him that, at the end of the day, he's a Flynn, and he's fully entitled to fight for what is. Billows thanks him for backing him all the way, then secretly asks what exactly he nicked using the gadgets he requested. Steal, I'm not a crook. Mate, I just borrowed 'em. You're such a drongo. As night falls, that sly fox Ron approaches his young lord to ask for a really weird favor. He practically begs him to look after his son Beecroc while he goes out hunting. Has he forgotten that his kid is a literal assassin too? Kale couldn't care less. He just asks if those foxes are actually beastmen. Ron flashes a cynical grin and replies, "Yep, he wants to wipe out that bloody pest problem." Our hero realizes he doesn't really need him as much anymore, now that Locke got the strength to go full wolf. So he lets him go, on the condition that he sends monthly reports. Heading off to bed, Ron thinks his young master was always a cunning little bastard. But judging by the way Kale talks, it's pretty bloody obvious who the real mastermind is around here. The butler leaves. Thank God for that, 'cause he was starting to give us the creeps. In the dead of night, the hero squad links up, with Rosalind rocking a new look. Things are getting serious, though she is still in the dark about today's game plan. Anyway, onto the good stuff. Kale's divvying up the teams. Rosalind will be working with Locke. Choi Han's teaming up with Round, while An and Hong will make up the last group. If you're wondering what Kale's doing, well, he's going solo because he reckons he's a tough guy. Truth is, though, everyone just thinks he's useless and gets in the way. Choi Han gives the heads up that they'll make their move during the Royal Guard shift change. Right at that exact moment, they'll sneak into where the bombs are planted and start defusing them immediately, using the black orb to cut off the mana flow before a massive disaster kicks off. The plan starts at 9 in the morning, smack bang in the middle of the king's birthday bash. The only catch is that Rosalind, once she finds out what's going on, demands a diffused bomb as payment for pitching in, just as everyone heads off. Kale pops his indestructible shield, praying to God he won't actually have to lift a finger himself. He's just praying he doesn't bump into that bloodthirsty lunatic. The moment of truth is finally here. Ron says his goodbyes and promises to be back in a year, leaving our main guy to march towards his ultimate destiny. Now joined by Miss Amiru, who admits that the Crown Prince decided not to fund her ambitious little project. After all, building a military base is definitely not cheap. But stick around, mates, because the real nightmare is going to be keeping the peace between the territories. Stick around, because today we're diving into why the whole territory is zeroing in on the northeast for one simple reason. It's got direct access to the ocean. Amir's stressing out that the crown might nick his land, but Kale tells him to hold his horses and not jump the gun. The final call is up to the Count. A military base doesn't just do a solid for the royals. It's also a massive win for the nobles dropping heaps of cash into it. Since at the end of the day, a huge chunk of those profits will wind up right back in the crown's pockets. And let's be real here. Amir and Gilbert's territories just aren't worth enough to justify that kind of massive investment. But Amir knows that, and he wants to beat them to the punch by building it entirely on his own. So his only real option is to hit up the wealthiest family to bankroll the whole thing. Pay close attention to this. Amir knows the Crown Prince is keeping a close eye on his turf, so he's gone and hired informants to stay one step ahead of the game. Kale is absolutely blown away by the insane amount of cash being poured into this, though deep down, he's got massive respect for the sheer guts and determination it takes to go all in on what you believe in. So he doesn't make any hard promises. But he still reckons he'll have a chat with his old man to see if they can get that naval base built in the Northwest Territory. If they pull it off, they'll be sharing a military base with their families. And the absolute best part is that, thanks to those deadly whirlpools, they'll stop any invasion attempts right in their tracks, turning the place into the ultimate safe haven to kick back and retire. Kale gives his word that he'll pass the message on to the Count, and with a firm handshake, the nobles lock in the deal. Kale finally rolls up to his destination at 8 in the morning. I know exactly what you're thinking. There's still an hour left before things kick off, and by 8:30 in the morning, the square is going to be absolutely chock-a-block. Right at that moment, nobody's getting in or out without turning heads, making it the perfect time to kick off the massive search. The explosives could be stashed absolutely anywhere, disguised as an everyday accessory, or even strapped right onto someone. But he's backing his mates 100% to defuse them in time. So when Eric, Gilbert, Amir, and Kale finally meet up, an absolute miracle happens. Taylor can actually walk again. But that's going to have to take a back seat for now, because Ryan tells him the bombs will be completely dead by 8:55 in the morning. As he heads off, The little dragon begs him to stay safe. The second Kale hops into the carriage. He wonders if the prince intentionally rounded them all up in the exact same spot. Not that it matters now anyway. All hell is about to break loose real soon. And that's a wrap. Mates, that brings us to the end of Season 1 of Trash of the Count's Family.